where are we and what does that mean for my future generations? And it's not just my kids, not just my grandkids, but my great grandkids that are touched and affected by what is happening right now.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Hello and welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand, and I'm joined this week by Zach Simke. How are you going, Zach?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. And we've got Ilka back with us. In fact, I missed a week, but really great to have you back, Ilka. How are you?
Good. It's great to be back.
And you're reporting back on day 2 of the NESI conference. Sounds like you had a pretty amazing time, but also you were quite busy.
Yes, the second day was definitely very busy because I was curating 2 of those sessions, which didn't involve too much more than running a microphone back and forth. But I still had to be there and make sure everything ran smoothly. So it was great.
Yeah. And as you talk about in this discussion, that you've been involved not just on the day, but sort of curating some of the content and behind the scenes in organising the event, which I know that's a big part of the success of event and the flavour of event is that, like you say, curation of that, which, I guess is that something that you enjoy doing?
I do. I just think it's great to see all the submissions, and this is what we see at the conference is just a fraction of what actually came in, and there's so many submissions that are equally great but somehow didn't make it because of how things are put together. But it's just great to be connected that way to the community for sure.
Well, and that's a really great problem to have, that people want to contribute, and that there's so much great content that you've got almost too much to choose from, rather than scratching around trying to find stuff. That's a really good problem to have. All right, we'll get into that because there's some really interesting and thought-provoking discussion there about day 2 of this year's NESI conference. But before we do that, Zach, we've got a few people to thank.
Yeah, we sure do. Well, first I want to thank New Energy Works for being the sponsor of this NESI series that Ilka has been heading up. So a big thank you to New Energy Works for making that possible. Also, a big thank you to Rockwell North America, who is the sponsor of the week at Passive House Accelerator and is making everything possible for us this week, including the Passive House podcast. And thank you to NYSERDA, our stakeholder partner. NYSERDA is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thank you to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, Icon Windows and Doors, Intis Windows, LG Air Conditioning Technologies, Proseco, Source 2050, and Zender.
All right. Well, I think we're just going to let this roll, Ilka, because you do a really great job of summarizing everything. So, this is NESI, which is the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association, and this is the conference this year from Boston in March. And I think you do a really good job of summarizing anything. So, I don't know, is there anything else you want to add before we roll into it?
Well, I just want to thank Jacob again, who was pressed for time, as I mentioned before. And it was great that he did make the time and talk to me and reflected on what we saw on both days.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for bringing it to us. And I hope you all enjoy this summary of day 2 from NESI.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks for having me back. Good to
Yeah.
be with you.
I'm glad you came back.
You too.
So, day 2.
Day 2, here we go.
Yeah, and we just walked out of a very, I don't know, I don't want to say heavy, very deep
Yes.
and impactful keynote.
That was unlike any keynote I have ever experienced at a conference before.
Yeah, and we actually wanted to interview the presenters, but they had to rush out to get their flight.
Understandable, but unfortunate.
Absolutely. So we're gonna try and do a really good job
Yes.
of explaining what
Yes.
what just happened, right?
Exactly. We'll carry the experience back to you, the listener here.
Yeah, and it's actually not the first time that we had this experience, right?
Exactly.
We had the pleasure to actually join a session that they did probably like 2 years ago. I think
Yes.
we both did it.
Yep.
in
And then
New
they
York.
repeated it again last year as well
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it was so well received.
Yeah, and we both went back
We
for
did.
more.
Yes.
And then we actually went back today.
Yes, because it was that good.
It was that good, and it was a packed, giant room.
Oh yeah, gosh,
Yeah.
Over 1,000 people. I would
For sure.
estimate. Mhm.
So this was, I know that, well, we should name the presenters,
Yes,
right?
of course. So Melissa O'Mara and Kevin Stack.
The keynote's title was Unstoppable: Inner Resilience and Generational Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know that the presenters, that Melissa and Kevin, were a little nervous because it's, it was a little bit of a risky thing to do.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So in case you were wondering what we're alluding to here, they essentially took us on a guided meditation through connecting back generations to our ancestors that preceded us and connecting forward to our future generations that will precede us, and really helping us visualize the role that we play in sort of this legacy of curating our lives on this planet. It was that deep, and I really commend them for taking the leap from a smaller session of a couple of few dozen people running through a process like that, but bringing that to a keynote in front of a full room of over 1,000 people and holding that energy in that space and trusting that the room would come along with them and really participate with open hearts and open minds it was a bold move.
It certainly was, and also nobody expected anything like that.
Except for the small handful of us that had experienced it in the past.
Exactly.
People did not know what they were in for. I don't believe.
Yeah, no, it was great, and I since I had done it before. Of course I went along with the visualization, but I also looked around the room quite a bit just to try and read people's faces.
What did you notice? I'm curious.
I saw people tearing up again.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I also, and I got some feedback from some other people, and they were like, well, in the beginning, I wasn't really sure about this, and I wasn't really into it, but by the end of the session, they got me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's kind of what I saw, and the feedback, of the experience was also very, very deep and very, people were very moved.
Yeah, I had the really unique experience to have the honor to do some musical accompaniment for the visualization, which was a really powerful experience for me to participate in that way, and it also gave me the opportunity to observe the room as folks were engaging in this deep visualization process. And I saw the same thing that you did, folks that seemed a little skeptical and kind of uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable thing to ask people to be emotionally vulnerable in a professional context like that. That is not something we're culturally trained to do. And to see folks really emerge into this place of emotional honesty and vulnerability over the course. I mean, some folks went right there, and then some folks it took a minute, but people engaged, they showed up, they have really sat with that challenge. And one thing I really appreciate with the way the intention they set around that is it wasn't just about people tapping into their own emotional experience for their own sake. They really frame this around, hey, we are leaders in this community, and we are trying to do hard transformational work in this industry of creating a better built environment for all of us. And we need to do our own work to step into that place of leadership and to really do all that technical and intellectual and kind of social work we have to do. So really framing it from that connection to this broader work that we're doing in the high performance building community and whatnot, I think drew the connection for people to be able to understand why it was valuable and to be able to relate that to all the other sessions around district heating and enclosure detailing.
Yeah.
But there really was a through line there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you were talking about people opening up. So part of that session was also to turn around and partner up with someone you may or may not know at all, and talk to them through. So the idea was one person was the future self, and then the other person was the current self. So, and then through Kevin's words, he read some words. It was basically the future self talking to the current self about how does it feel being in this moment right now. And there are a lot of things that are not going well right now.
Yeah.
So being at that moment of, okay, where are we and what does that mean for my future generations? And it's not just my kids, not just my grandkids, but my great grandkids that are touched and affected by what is happening right now.
Absolutely.
And
it was really powerful, and I really appreciated with what Kevin was saying. And of course everyone interprets these words in their own way, but my interpretation as I was sort of playing along with his words was there was a real accountability. I think that we do a really good job as professionals in the space within the passive community and in general in the high performance world of we are leaning in and trying to do this good work for the greater good, but to really be confronted with having a conversation with your potential future grandchildren and be like, what did you do? What are you doing right now? And to have that mirror held back up, and not in a judgmental way, and not in in some sort of browbeating kind of a way, but just this real the clarity of the mirror of confronting the future versions of ourselves and really understanding how are we showing up right now. I don't think we often have the opportunity to really reflect on that deep level of how we're bringing ourselves to our work. Even though it's mission driven, and even though we're leaning in its community, there is a real personal point of reflection of how am I showing up right now? Because there's so many different ways to show up, even within the context of doing this good work. And it was very powerful to see a whole community of people wrestling with that. Yeah,
wrestling and really stepping out and seeing that very broad picture of 7 generations, right? I mean, I think that's the key thing here, that it's not just, for this moment, but how do you. And I guess because we've done these sessions before, and I think the first time when we did it, there was a little bit more they talked more about the framework around it, the inner development goals.
Right, yes, I remember that, exactly. A little more of the structure.
And they had another session after the keynote where I think they explained that a little bit more.
Yes, went into some of those details.
But I thought that was a very important context of, okay, so how. And they also talk about the knowing-doing gap, right?
Yes.
So
I love that.
Yeah. So we know what we need to do, we know how to do it, but a lot of times we actually don't really get there.
Yeah.
And that was actually when I talked to I was the future self. So my partner was the current person who had to explain to me, how does it feel right now? And he kind of said that. He was like, I'm here, I'm doing all these things, but somehow it doesn't feel like I'm doing enough.
Yeah.
So, and it really, made me think about these inner development goals and this knowing-doing gap of, okay, we know that there's this gap, but how do we get people to actually bridge that?
Yes.
And appealing to your, inner, I don't even know what to call it, like that.
Knowing self, like
your deep motivation. Like
purpose,
why?
Maybe. I really appreciate what you were saying there as you were speaking. It made me think that it's easy to say I'm not doing enough
and I need to do more. And that psychology, I think we all wrestle with that. Any of us doing change-making work or mission-driven work, and we look around us and see that like the needle isn't necessarily moving as much, or our projects aren't getting to that like next level that we really like want them to be at. And it's easy to beat ourselves up and to push ourselves to the point of exhaustion or burnout, and that kind of martyr complex. I see a lot of people in our field. And what I really appreciate around this challenge of the accountability of this, as I'm reflecting on what you're saying, is that it's not just that we need to do more of the same thing and burn ourselves out. It's just, is what we are doing the right thing, or it's how we're showing up for that, really doing, matching the intention that we have. And that really gets down to a very core level of purpose. And, it's not just the what are we doing, but how are we doing it? And sort of what does it mean to show up at this time? And I think I can speak for myself. It's easy to fall in the trap of, I just need to put in another like 3 hours today, or I just need to like push the same thing I'm doing harder. And that's not necessarily, and maybe even often, the answer. And so this really gives you the opportunity to really pause and reflect and ask those questions on a deeper level.
Yeah, and I also, for me, it was also because I, as the future self, had to respond, right? I had to talk to my current self, and in a way it's like, okay, I'm here, right? I made it. So just for the current self, also being able to put faith into the future.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Into the future generations. That's important.
And there's actually a real relationship there across time.
And I did see a session yesterday that was run by very young people.
Oh, wonderful.
That's
great.
So the session was called Building the Energy Workforce, Hands-on Pathways from Campus to Community.
Oh, fantastic.
And it was a lot about what the College of the Atlantic does. And,
they're doing great work.
And how, that's just such a good model to build diverse and, skilled workforce. And one of their points was, of course, it's really important, diversity in general, right? And how do we get there? But it's one of their learning objectives, and I actually wrote it down, was embrace the next generation of leaders and learn from their vision of the future.
Fantastic.
Right?
Leadership cultivation is so crucial.
So I think that's definitely a lesson learned, and something that I reflected on after, or maybe during the session this morning, that we do ourselves, we do what we can now, but just by doing it, we're also, giving hope to future generations and putting in seed into their thinking, and then we kind of have to trust them a little bit as well.
Sounds like you really got the most out of that session this morning. It's wonderful.
No, it was great. Again. Well, and then I'm actually really excited for the rest of today.
Yes.
Because...
Not done yet.
No. we just got started. So because I think, as I mentioned earlier, I was on the content committee.
Thank you for your service and for creating such a fabulous palette of learning opportunities for us.
So no, it was fun. It's such a great way to just get involved. But 2 of the sessions that I was curating are going to happen today.
Oh, exciting.
So the one that is coming up is how to make a house levitate, the accidental deep energy retrofit.
A compelling title.
It's very cool. And the speakers are Phil Kaplan, Gavin Pond, and Grace Tisdale.
Oh, what a great team.
And I have Phil lined up for an interview after.
Oh, fantastic.
So let's
He's
listen.
Brilliant.
Let's listen to that.
I look forward to hearing this.
I am here with Phil Kaplan, and you are the co-founder and principal of Bright Build Home and Kaplan Thompson Architects, which is an award-winning firm named the Architect 50, top 50 firms in sustainability in the US. And you are a NASI Distinguished Service Award recipient. And you also have a podcast, The Green Architects Lounge. And I also see on your badge that you are a NASI Lifetime member.
I am.
And Yeah, I'm surprised I just got to know you basically today in person because I was curating your session that we just walked out to. It was pretty awesome. So,
Thank you.
yeah, let's.
Well, nice to meet you in person.
Yeah.
And I had seen you speak, I think it was a couple of years ago you did a presentation.
Yeah, I've presented here before.
Yeah.
So I've been around.
And so I was blown away by the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
So right back at you.
Thanks. So, well, let's maybe start with the presentation that we just saw.
Sure.
Yeah, tell us about it.
It was called the Accidental Deep Energy Retrofit, and how to make a house levitate. So it was a little bit of twofold. It was about just how to do a deep energy retrofit, particularly when you didn't think you were going to do one. And it was a story of how we kept finding things as we went deeper and deeper. What started to be a light touch project ended up getting to be, the proverbial can of worms. Once we started opening up the crawl space, and on, finding difficulties. We found an inch of EPS within the walls that was completely had to cause us to reverse our strategy for the wall drying out because of the vapor drive we thought was going to go in, and then it had to go out, but we didn't discover that till after the fact. So we had to change our exterior insulation strategy. And the levitation part was based on something the clients requested. So it was an old Acorn Deck House. So there's a company that does prefab post and beam with soaring ceilings and lots of glass and mid-century modern, effectively design. Started in the 50s, and they're great looking buildings, and they're out of Massachusetts, Acton, Mass, I believe. So they're all over the place, been around for a long time, but they're very challenging to remodel because it's such a tight package of prefab kit of parts. So it's kind of hard to change things around. And it's particularly hard to try to make them energy efficient because they are just not. So in order to meet the client's brief, we had to remove all the structural columns, literally all the structural columns on the main floor, and reverse the structure, turn it in the opposite direction to make that happen because of the post and beam nature of the house. So it was effectively about doing that work surgically, and also about making the house not look puffy when you're adding 4 inches of rigid insulation all over the place. So.
Yeah, I liked how you described it as being puffy or not puffy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so true. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a very good example of how architecture works sometimes, right? You start a project and you have no idea where it's going, right? And you started out with the client wanting to tear down and build new, and then it turned into a light touch and then this deep energy retrofit. And one of the questions I thought was, from the audience, I thought was really interesting because the question was, like, with all the effort that it took to do this deep energy retrofit and meeting the client's demands of, removing all those structural columns and being energy efficient and all of that, was it worth doing the retrofit, or in terms of looking at embodied carbon and materiality, would it have been almost the same as building it new?
Yeah, it was a really good question. And so typically when we look at extensive retrofits of this kind, once you do the numbers, it's just cheaper to take it down. So that's lousy for embodied carbon, but you could make the case if it was less expensive to keep the existing structure, but it's usually not.
Yeah.
In this case, surprisingly, it was significantly cheaper. And the other thing, when you start from new, the client will keep going.
Yeah.
It's hard to control that program. And here we just said, we're keeping the footprint. Mm-hmm. And something was interesting about this house. Like, it was really well sited. Like, the bones of it were really good. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't a bad plan. It just had stupid structural columns in the way, really. And we moved some stuff on the plan, but the second floor was in great shape. Like, there were a lot of reasons to keep it in place, even though we had to do the structural acrobatics. And I think it would be a really great thing to go back and do some beam calcs on it to measure the embodied carbon after the fact. But what Jacob said, so Jacob Rakusin, who basically invented beam to measure embodied carbon, he just had a session before us, and he was talking about, like, when you do an existing building, everything for the existing structure counts as 0. Mm-hmm. and then you go from there.
Yeah.
It was hard to beat that. Even when you start adding steel onto zero, it's still a lot less than a new house.
Yeah.
So like intuitively, I still think we did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it for sure turned out beautifully, and apparently the client is very, very happy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, there's
that's
just
good.
something about living in an old house too, right? Or older house
Yeah.
that is just different than a new build as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
You know.
So what other projects does your firm do?
We do a lot of affordable multifamily. In fact, we're about 50% affordable multifamily now. And then the other half is probably 2/3 of that is single family residential. And that includes remodels. And then we do some work for nonprofits. We're finishing off our first 2 buildings for Maine Audubon at Gilson Farm. We've done a master plan for them, so there will be more buildings to come. We're doing work for the Kiev Wavis camps, or nonprofit kids camps up in Maine. We just did some master planning work for Marahawk School, a school outside of Boston. So, you know, we're doing a few institutional and schools, and we still throw in a restaurant every now and then, just because we used to do them and they're kind of fun.
Yeah.
Our interiors team loves them. So.
Great. Well, you also have a podcast that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah. So our podcast is Green Architects Lounge, and Chris Briley and I, Chris is another architect in town, his firm is Bryburn, started this a long time ago, like 15 years ago we started doing this.
Wow.
And we were very different architects then. We've done, I think, 60 episodes to date, but we did a whole bunch of them and then stopped for COVID. We stopped a few years before COVID and picked it up right before COVID started, and then we stopped again. Guess why? Because we had no place to record anymore. But we now have sponsors, and we now are in a group with the BS and Beers crew, Ben Bogie and Emily Mottram and Mike Maines and Travis Brungart. Just a really wonderful group of folks, and they encouraged us to get behind the mic again. And the concept of Green Architects Lounge is kind of like this, Ilka. It's kind of like what we're doing right now. It's like you go to the conference, but it's usually the conversations that you have after the sessions, where you just say, "Oh, come on, really? What about this? Why did they do?" That's.
Yeah.
They said they did a good job, but they used a lot of steel. I don't buy it. We really challenge and have frank conversations about it. So that's kind of what Chris and I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, we have sponsors, but we only use the sponsors the products that we use, and we'll challenge them head on. And they understand that's part of the game.
Yeah.
So, but, bottom line is that Chris and I are doing it again because it's fun for us and it keeps us fresh. It forces me to keep learning. When we do, what was the one that we just did recently? Oh, house burping was in the news a whole bunch.
House burping?
You heard anything about house burping?
No, I don't know house burping.
I can't actually remember the name of it now, but it's a Norwegian word. Oh gosh, there's a German word. I'm totally drawing a blank, but it was in the New York Times, and it got a lot of talk on social media. But people just leave their windows and doors open for a certain amount of time.
Well, Germans do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Stoßlüftung in German.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's there. So
Yeah.
you know that.
I do know that.
So we were talking about that in terms of building science. It's actually not a bad idea. It just wastes a lot lot of energy, and
Yes.
that's what ventilation is. Mechanical ventilation is for. So you can do an ERV
Yeah.
for it costs more, but that was an example of one of the things we were talking about.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So what's your feedback on this year's sessions then?
Oh, fantastic year!
Yeah.
Really, this is my 20th year.
Wow.
I think I started coming in 2006. So it's kind of a milestone year. I didn't really think about it. Actually, I know that because it coincides with my 20th year of my firm starting as Kaplan Thompson Architects. I hung a shingle in 2004. Jesse Thompson joined me in 2006. So it's been a mad 20.
Yeah. Wow,
and
congrats.
this year, so I've been to a lot of these, and this morning's plenary session was really, really kind of wonderful and eye-opening, and sort of this fun. I don't know how would you describe it? Okay, help me out here. I formed this mental picture, and I felt myself holding hands with my family before and my family after, and I pictured every member, even the ones that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I got a picture of them. I was like, oh, that one's female. Like I just felt like, I just felt them.
Yeah.
And then this distinct responsibility as being the middle of the chain.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm the center. Like I'm holding on to the past and I'm holding on to the future. I got all you guys. So like if my hands drop, I'm dropping the people below me.
Yeah.
Like just the incredible responsibility that I have to carry from these three who came before me and give to those three after me was tangible to me. And it just was really like this emotional hit that was like, oh, I got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It was really energizing and really kind of beautiful too.
Yeah. No, I thought so too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would go, if they presented again, I would go again just to have that experience.
Yeah, one of my employees came up after me and said, "Can we do this at our retreat?" I was like, "I don't see why not."
Yeah,
I think that
That's
sounds
great.
really wonderful. Let's do it again.
There any other sessions that were impactful?
I saw this great session on thermal bridging yesterday. I thought it was fantastic, given by a couple structural engineers.
Mm-hmm.
They were great, and maybe some new techniques and new products that I learned about that were kind of fun. I liked their diagrams. They did a really good job sort of talking to the architect, the builder, everyone, more than you would think an engineer can. Oh no, just kidding. They're very personable, really wonderful.
That's awesome.
Ben Bogey and Jacob Rakusin just gave a session.
Mm-hmm.
Were you at that one?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, it was great.
I mean, but either one of those guys can command a room 3 times that size.
Yeah.
So them together is just kind of magical. Just hearing them talk and just like the incredible knowledge that like I don't even know how they remember those things. It's just but it's just part of who they are.
Yeah,
Just
they've
the
never
brilliance.
presented together.
Yeah. Oh, they never
Yeah, it
have,
was the
really?
first time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't tell. They just rolled right off of
Yeah, it
each
was
other. They're
great.
very skilled and inspiring, and they talked a lot about the relationship between embodied carbon and health, and being able to use the language that people can understand and people care about, and people do. They don't really care about embodied carbon, but they care about comfort and health.
Yeah.
And we talk about that internally, but to be able to do a better job specifying those things and understanding what we put in our buildings, what healthy products are, is really important to keep remembering and keep hammering down on. So it's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to do it.
Yeah.
Right? To say, all right, well, we know we can call up the carbon supplier if we want, but we don't do it.
Yeah.
Ben has told us to do that before, and we tried it once, and we couldn't get through, and we're like, well, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But we need to keep trying. We really need to do a better job at continuing to hammer on those things that we can't control.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the hard things. The ones we can control are the ones we lean into. We put less, I think we do a good job of that. We try to put less concrete in buildings. We do a better job with, low embodied carbon insulations and things like that. But it's the ones that we can't control that we can't give up on. Getting the manufacturers to change their ways and getting the concrete supplier to really put in something that's got less Portland cement. Like we can push. We have more impact than we think we have.
Yeah.
More agency than we think we have in those decisions. So that's really good reminder.
Yeah, and I think what was very encouraging about their presentation too is that they had so many examples where it actually has been working to push the manufacturers, right? Just the example of spray foam. Like now, it's hard to find spray foam that has a really high global warming potential anymore, because now it's standard to use the one with low global warming potential, and that's because the industry has pushed, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely encouraging to see that once you do that, it's actually working.
Right. We had an impact.
Yeah. That's good.
They listened. It was really cool. One of the things I thought was fascinating and a little disheartening was the VOCs to SVOCs conversation, that how much paint is such a big issue of the pollution of our oceans, and that the manufacturers has switched out of no VOCs, but now they're, whisper on the side, SVOCs, which are, I don't even remember what the S stands for, but
I'm not sure.
but also bad.
Yeah.
But now they can say no SVOC, and in some cases it might actually be worse.
Yeah.
So
for the occupants, for sure.
Right, for the occupants.
Yeah. I mean, I guess indoor air quality is a whole nother can of worms, right?
Yeah, but Jacob, every time he talks, he remembers he reminds us that it all ties together.
Yes, yes.
That like we're all in the same can of worms.
Yeah, yeah,
For
sure.
Everything is all tied in.
Yeah.
From the construction to the buildings, to transportation, to the people, to the social justice behind it.
Yeah.
It's all one.
Yeah. Well, lastly, I saw that on your podcast you talk about cocktails.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so any good recipes there?
Oh, so many. Where to start? So yeah, Green Exit. So we always start with a cocktail of the episode, and I'm sort of like sort of an amateur mixologist on the side, but really it doesn't take much to get beyond an amateur. I mean, there are definitely some techniques that work better than others. I'm trying to remember a recent one. We do a lot of equal parts cocktails, and the reason we do that is because it's easier for folks to remember. It's easier for folks to pour. And I think if you say, well, you do 3/4 of an ounce of this, a half ounce of this, and you give them 5 ingredients, it's a little too esoteric. But if you say Negroni is 1 part this, 1 part this, 1 part this. Right on. Let's get the 3 things and let's roll. So I think that's one of the reasons people start making Negronis, because they're really easy to make.
And they're good.
Yeah, and well, if they sucked, it wouldn't work either. We just did the Last Word cocktail. It's one of my favorite equal parts cocktails. So a Last Word is a maraschino liqueur, chartreuse. So they're both liqueurs. Lime juice and gin, equal parts, 3/4 ounce of each.
Nice.
And it's lovely and interesting and a little weird, and just go order one. It's hard to get chartreuse now. There's been a run on chartreuse, so there's a little bit of it's hard to get now. So in the podcast we give you a couple of suggestions of things that you can use if you can't find the chartreuse. But go have a Last Word, Ilka, tonight. I'll buy you one if I see you at the bar.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was very much a pleasure.
It was very nice meeting you in person.
Likewise.
Finally.
And Ilka was the curator of our session today, so thank you for your work on that.
Yeah.
You had really useful and actionable things for us to help improve the session. So I appreciate it.
Great. Well, it's a really good way to get involved into NESI as a volunteer, and it's been fun. It's my 2nd year actually doing the content committee, and I'll do it again next year.
You guys are doing a great job. It was a really great year. Excellent session.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. You can tell that Phil has good experience as a podcaster.
Oh yeah, he was great. He was great, and I was happy that he could share some cocktail recipes with us.
Yeah, he is a wealth of knowledge in many domains.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
That's terrific.
So here we are, end of day 2.
Oof, what another full day.
I'm
it's
exhausted.
Like a week's worth of knowledge crammed into 48 hours.
For sure.
Yeah, what a rich experience.
Yeah, let's hear. What were the highlights for you today?
Highlights today, let's see. Well, I was grateful to have the opportunity to present again this morning. It was really exciting to present with my colleague Ben Bogie. We've never presented before, and that was a really wonderful experience. I was able to finally get to a session, which was terrific. And session that jumped out for me was right at the very end of the day. Kyle Macht and Michael Hindle presented on what was essentially the 3rd chapter in an ongoing conversation around how to evaluate the sort of the economic and the carbon and the practical value of conducting deep energy versus more moderate energy retrofits. It was a conversation that kicked off 2 years ago now with the keynote address that Rachel and Brendan from Bigmeister really trying to run the numbers and question, do DERs pencil out? Can we really do this? Does this really make sense? And kicked off a firestorm of debate on the internet and in various green building circles. They had a follow-up kind of counterpoint between Michael, who was making the argument that they really do pencil out, needing to look at the social cost of carbon and the other externalities of costs that are impacted and justify doing more of an intervention on old houses. And then in this session, they sort of brought the conversation back. Kyle Macht, who's working on a master's project, built an incredible calculator, really trying to pull all of those different factors, economic factors, carbon factors, energy factors, into a unified tool to be able to conduct some parametric analysis and really kind of run different scenarios and figure out when does this make sense and under what conditions and with what system boundaries. And I credit him with really trying to pull all those variables together into one analytical tool, and to see him and Michael kind of present on how we can really start to strategize and make data-driven decisions around how deeply to intervene with a lot of these existing buildings. Just the details of that, and the quality of the tool, and the depth of the conversation was incredible. But for me, it really brought out the spirit of Nessie and this like professional inquiry and this community spirit of challenging each other intellectually and with our technical capacity to like tackle these like hardest questions that we have, and year upon year upon year really dig in. I've never been to a conference where now the third year in a row really trying to dig into this most thorny issue and some of the hardest issues that our industry faces. And I commend Nessie as a community for really being able to tackle those hardest questions over such a long arc of time, as well as to all the participants, to Big Meister and to Michael and to Kyle, for really showing up in the work and the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of improving our practice together. That was really inspiring on the meta level as well as on the detailed content level. It was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I've been following that discussion too, because I was there at the keynote.
Oh yes.
I was there at the follow-up and I actually interviewed them afterwards.
Ah yes.
Which was really great too.
So you know the narrative arc of this.
I do.
High drama in the world of high performance retrofit.
High drama in the world of Nessie. Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I think back then when I interviewed them, it was, the main thing was, we should be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? There was controversy, and, we don't always have to have the same opinion, and we can challenge each other.
Exactly.
So that's great. I did miss that session because one of my other curated sessions was at the same time.
That's a great excuse.
Yeah, and what's interesting is they also worked or presented tools to do something similar.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah. So very, very, very good session. So the session title was The Balancing Act, Reducing Embodied and Operational Carbon in High Performance Envelopes.
Fantastic.
So the speakers were David Charney with Goody Clancy.
Oh yeah, they're a great firm.
Yeah, Philippe Francisco with NYL, Studio NYL. And then Rachel Gary, she's also with Goody Clancy.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so what they did is share, a lot of the research or a lot of the approaches in terms of envelope. I mean, they work on really large buildings, a lot of educational buildings.
Sure.
So, just focusing on the facade because, they made a point that that's the second after the structure.
Sure.
In terms of carbon emissions.
Sure.
So, and they looked at different ways of doing these assemblies, and it's not just one material, it's really the, how everything goes together, because if one material gets heavier, you need more material in the structure, and so it's kind of a trade-off, and they looked at different details, but they also at the end shared a tool that they've been developing, looking parametrically at changing what changes in the facade do not only to the operational carbon, but also to the embodied carbon. Wow. So, and I think that's something that I'm walking away with, that it used to be a lot more separate, right? There was passive house, and the big focus was always on operational, and then a couple of years ago you started talking about embodied carbon. That was a really, really important conversation to add to the mix, but I feel like it was always, even the presentations was always like, okay, how can we be more energy efficient, and these are the details, and then on the other presentation was like, okay, how do we deal with the embodied carbon? And so I feel like, and you kind of went into that with your session too, that it's both, right? And now we're developing these tools that we can actually look at both at the same time and make the right choices.
It's maybe one of the things I'm the most excited about, how quickly the sophistication of this community has been able to look at this full picture.
Yes.
So one of the things I've always been the most worried about in really trying to bring embodied carbon into the conversation, having been an energy modeler for many years, I got my CPHC back in 2012, and so I really come from this like foundation of energy literacy and the operational emissions associated with energy use, and in trying to bring embodied carbon to the conversation. There's always been this risk, and sometimes this risk has been real, around sort of distracting from the energy, or seeing them as in competition, or seeing that there's a trade-off, and like making poor strategies by pitting them against each other. And we've seen some of that confusion in the marketplace and in dialogue around this. But it has been so encouraging to see the quality of the inquiry and the debate and the analysis, where we're like, no, we really need to look at more than one thing, and develop tools and develop strategies and develop tactics that really solve for both problems. And I'm so encouraged and so energized by the passion and the knowledge and the insights of this community to really, everything you were just saying, to be like, no, we need to look at both of these and find the approaches that really solve for both of these problems, and not get lost and bogged down in these sort of I would consider sort of like foolish conversations about which one should we focus on. Like, we need to solve. We need to solve for both. And so I'm really encouraged to hear about these types of tools and these types of case studies, and that the conversation is really evolving rapidly to how do we look at the total carbon picture and do it in a data-driven and kind of co-beneficial way. I'm like, okay, we've got this. We can do this.
Yeah, and that big firms invest, and they have invested. And I think it's
real leadership.
Yeah, and going back to the conference theme of "Don't Stop Us Now," there's no way that they're just going to throw all this research, all this development.
Absolutely not.
That's a lot of money spent.
Absolutely.
You're not going to throw that out the window, right?
And you can't unlearn it. And what was really exciting to see is that there are real business cases and real value propositions that go beyond just the benefits of environmental good, but that really show up in the dollars and cents of what makes for a good building. And
and also that everyone is so, or at least those amongst the community, everyone is so convinced that this is, or knows that this is the right way to go, that everyone finds ways to just bringing it. Just ways to bring it into the projects without maybe even talking about it.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a big key takeaway too, that I've heard from several people walking out of the sessions. Like, we just, you just do it.
Just do it.
It's just what it is.
It just becomes what you do.
Yeah, and you don't really talk about it. You know, we don't talk about sustainability anymore. It's just what we do, and then nobody really is going to take it away.
And I think that's one of the most inspiring pieces to come out of what is an incredibly challenging time right now, is that yes, while values around sustainability may be under attack, or they, policies and tax incentives and things that support some of those initiatives may be, in decline, the response to that has not been to do less. It's just been to make that just a standard operating procedure. That is just business as usual, is now just incorporating that into our work, because it doesn't necessarily have to cost more, and in some cases it can even cost less. And that this just becomes embedded in the work we do. And in many ways, that's always been the goal of sustainability, that it's not some separate thing that gets bolted on or called out or categorized differently. It is literally embedded in the work that we do. And all the best cases in the passive community that we've seen have been where, nope, this wasn't something we added on separately. We started, and the best cases of passive house development has been, nope, this was just what we were doing, and then we figured out where to go from there once we said that this was our floor instead of our ceiling. And that's a huge piece of what I've seen this community sort of show up in these troubled times, is just naming, this is our floor, we don't have to talk about it. If that's going to cause friction, or if that's going to be a distraction, great, we don't need to go there, but we're still going to do it, and it's still going to be, all the benefits of that approach are still going to be revealed in the project.
No, I totally agree. Well, I think the last thing I would say, just kind of a reflection on the last 2 days, besides all those key takeaways, is, I don't know, it just seemed incredibly busy and active. It was so hard to pin people down, to even
Yes.
talk to them.
Yes,
Everyone
indeed.
always got stuck talking someplace, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm taking it as a good sign.
I completely agree. I was expecting that there may be more of a somber energy, or folks, feeling maybe like they couldn't show up with quite the same enthusiasm, or, the same spark that often, that we've seen in the past. And exactly the opposite. People seem more committed, more passionate. I really appreciated hearing from a lot of folks acknowledging the challenges of the times,
absolutely.
challenges of the economy, challenges of federal policy, some of these pieces, and just being really honest about that
Yeah.
and acknowledging it. And yet still, people are hustling, people are working, people are pushing forward. And Can't Stop Us Now was
Yeah.
like embodied in
Yeah.
all the different levels of this
Yeah.
community, and that is just so inspiring right
it
now.
was.
We
It
need
was.
this.
Yeah, I was going back to the bigger picture and saying, okay, this is a disruption, and yes, clearly it was acknowledged.
Yep.
It wasn't, not talked about, but yeah, there was just focus on the big picture, and
Yeah.
let's keep going.
And with every disruption, we know there are opportunities, and this is a community that really knows how to find and lean into those opportunities. And I think that was on full display in these
Yeah.
last couple of days.
Awesome. Well,
Wonderful to share these days with
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me aboard with you. This is
Thank you
just
so
fantastic
much.
to reflect with you.
yeah, it was great. Thank you. You're so busy, so I'm glad that I could grab you.
Oh, it was an honor. Happy to have this be a running thread through my Nessie experience.
Awesome.
So yeah,
Well,
really appreciate it, and
I'm
great to
sure.
connect with this community.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you next year.
I look forward to it. We'll be there.